Coming up on District Wire News, the President's health care overhaul. The Supreme Court hearing on the controversial health care bill begins today. We're at the Supreme Court with all the action.
And from hot to cold, an unusual freeze alert in effect for tomorrow. How will the changing weather patterns affect your garden? District Wire News starts right now. Good evening, I'm Simone Andrews.
And I'm Laura Rifkin. The Supreme Court met for the first of 3 hearings this week to discuss the constitutionality of requiring all Americans to buy health insurance. Lydia Bayud is here in the studio with more. Lydia?
Thanks, Laura. Now, this is a landmark Supreme Court case. The court is hearing arguments for 6 hours over 3 days. That's more time than they've given any other case in the past 44 years. Everyone agrees the outcome could have significant consequences for the presidential election this fall.
On Capitol Hill today is the Supreme Court hearing on the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Some are calling this an epic trial for a law that has had a polarizing effect on American society. 26 states and small business interest groups are plaintiffs in the case. They're questioning the constitutionality of Obamacare.
In this case, we are arguing that the law is unconstitutional, and specifically, we believe the individual mandate is unconstitutional. That's the provision of the law that requires every American to purchase health insurance.
The majority of people here, though, support the law.
I support the Affordable Care Act because I believe it's going to help patients and it's already helping millions of people. I believe that this law is going to improve the freedoms of Americans who are going to have the security of being covered for their health care. And so I believe that this law is something that's going to stay in place.
Others worry about the consequences of not passing the law.
I look at a generation a step down from us, the young people. Eventually, if we don't get something in place, they are not going to have any health care at all.
A small group of Tea Party activists are also making their voices heard.
Government should not be telling everyone they need to buy health care. We believe everyone should have health care, but they have to start over again.
Tickets are in high demand, and only the lucky few are getting in.
With only about 400 total seats available inside the Supreme Court, some people have been waiting in line here since last Friday. Others, as you can see behind me, have hired placeholders to wait for them.
The court will make its decision in late June, but for now, people are already lining up to get into tomorrow's hearing.
Now, if upheld, that law will go into effect in 2015. But when the court makes its decision in June, it'll be just a month before the Democratic and Republican national conventions. Back to you, Alora.
Thanks, Lydia. Simone?
Former Vice President Dick Cheney is recovering today after receiving a heart transplant this past weekend. Cheney has had over 5 heart attacks over the course of his lifetime, the first occurring when he was only 37 years old. He has been waiting nearly 2 years for a viable heart to become available for a transplant. Now at 71, Cheney is older than most transplant recipients, but his family reported that the procedure went well and thanks everyone for their continued support.
Despite the bad weather, atheists rallied on the National Mall this weekend. The rally was named the largest gathering of atheists in history. Some people traveled over 500 miles to participate in the gathering. It was referred to as the coming out party for religion denouncers.
Here to represent an out atheist in Alabama and just showing everyone that if I can be out in Alabama, you can be out anywhere.
The rally sparked the attention of the Westboro Baptist Church, who are well known for their protests at funerals of U.S. service members. The rally was not affected by the opposing protests and no arrests were reported.
A study released by the Pew Research Center found that there are signs of some uneasiness when it comes to mixing politics and religion. Nearly 4 in 10 Americans now say that there has been too much religion talk by politicians. CNN has the story.
I don't think we've seen in the history of this country the kind of attack on religious conscience, religious freedom, religious tolerance that we've seen under Barack Obama.
The candidate who said that it would take an act of God for Rick Santorum to win this nomination. I don't know about you, but I believe an act of God's.
Anyone who's president is faced with decisions so enormous that they should go to God.
Religion became one of the key issues in this presidential campaign. Republican primaries showed a continuous struggle for religious voters. Barack Obama is also stepping up his efforts to connect with Christian voters and meet church leaders. But there is a change in public opinion. Less and less people would like to hear religious expressions in politics. A new poll conducted by Pew Research Center finds that 4 out of 10 Americans, or 38%, say there has been too much expression of religious faith and prayer in politics, 30% too little, and 25% the right amount. The number of people disapproving the expression of religious faith by politicians increased by 9% since 2010 and more than tripled since 2001.
But I believe that the main role of politics is just to make sure that people can express their belief in the private sphere rather than resorting or relying on a specific religion to carry on their political program.
A growing number of atheists can explain the change in public opinion as well. Recent rally gathered non-believers from all over the country last Sunday in Washington, D.C. They wanted to protect their rights and called for respect from presidential candidates who expressed their faith and believe in God in public. Nadia Betson, Washington.
Employers are asking job seekers to disclose their Facebook usernames and passwords in the hope of learning more about them before they get hired. They're now using statuses, photos, and likes to get the inside scoop on a potential employee's life. But the legality of the practice is being questioned and is now the focus of proposed legislation in Illinois and Maryland. The legislation would forbid public agencies from asking interviewees for access to their social networks.
Rick Santorum is celebrating his latest victory. With a 49% vote, Santorum beat Romney in the Louisiana primaries. Fresh off the win, Santorum expressed concerns over whether his rival truly holds conservative beliefs. He claims the former Massachusetts governor will revert back to a more moderate stance if he secures the nomination.
I just want to say to the people of Louisiana, thank you very much. You have come through in a big way, and on behalf of my family and all the people up here who are gathered with us tonight here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, just let me thank you for making a very clear and crisp statement, and that is that you don't believe, as the pundits have said, that this race is over.
Romney maintains more than a 2-to-1 lead in delegates despite Santorum's victory. This raises the question whether the former Pennsylvania senator can prevent Romney from securing the nomination before the Republican convention in August.
New York has joined with 31 other states to change an existing policy concerning stillborn babies. Prior to this piece of legislation, parents of a stillborn child could obtain a death certificate but not a birth certificate. Parents can now legally obtain a hybrid of the two certificates that will be known as a certificate of stillbirth. The bill was co-sponsored by Senator Tim Kennedy, who pushed for the bill due to personal tragedy.
What my family went through when we lost my nephew, John Christian Jude Mulderick, to stillbirth, and later my daughter, Bridget.
The law will be retroactive, so parents who have had lost children to stillbirth in the past can now apply for their certificate.
City leaders in Florida are hoping for an emotional restraint town hall meeting tonight on the topic of Trayvon Martin. Martin was killed last month by a Neighborhood Watch volunteer. Martin's parents are scheduled to speak at a community meeting. CNN's Rick Vincent reports.
A solemn vigil Sunday night as a Sanford, Florida community remembered a teen gunned down 1 month ago. Earlier, Sunday best was replaced with hooded sweats in churches nationwide as worshipers honored Trayvon Martin. The 17-year-old was wearing a hoodie when he was shot and killed on February 26th in Sanford. Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman shot Martin, claiming self-defense. But civil rights activists, including the Reverend Jesse Jackson, aren't buying it.
A child so innocent killed by a vigilante, where he is killed and now we find shot in the back of the head. The man who killed him is still walking the streets free.
The case is drawing nationwide attention and heated debate over whether this was an act of self-defense or a racially motivated murder.
It felt
Race
forced.
hasn't even been part of this conversation
Race
so far.
is always part of this conversation. That's the problem.
Trayvon Martin's family will speak tonight during a Sanford Town Hall meeting. On Sunday, Martin's mother said she's grateful for the public response so far.
I'd like to say that we really thank them and we appreciate all the support. It means a lot to us. This really hits home.
This is Rick Vincent reporting.
Maryland lawmakers are proposing a gas tax alternative. State Senator George Edwards proposed a bill that would raise a higher tax on gas to fund mass transit. The tax hike would only affect areas that rely on a mass transit rail system. Those areas include Montgomery, Prince George's, and Anne Arundel counties, along with the city of Baltimore.
Mayor Gray has proposed a new piece of legislation that might keep people up a little later than before. Vanessa Jesus Gonzatti has more.
The district might start making money in unusual ways. As part of the 2013 budget, Mayor Vincent Gray is proposing an extension in liquor sales for bars, restaurants, and stores. If it passes, bars will be allowed to sell alcohol for 1 extra hour, which means until 3 a.m. on weekdays and 4 a.m. on weekends. For managers, these are good news.
I definitely think if the potential for higher sales after 4 o'clock, if there's potential to make more money from a business standpoint, I think it's great.
But tax revenue is not the only thing people have in mind. Young students also seem to agree with this kind of measure to bring a livelier nightlife to D.C.
I think it's a good proposal. I think that alcohol, most of the liquor stores closing at 8:30 gets to be a little bit difficult, and I think that it'll make the city better, the nightlife better.
Many are hesitant about making a statement on this issue and believe that conservative D.C. will not pass this proposal. If this regulation passes the D.C. Council, it will take effect in October and it will bring $5.3 million for the city next year. Vanessa Jesus Gonzatti for District Wire News.
Coming up next, rising tensions with North Korea. We'll tell you about the president's warning if the nation continues with missile tests.
And the Pope visits Cuba. We'll let you know his latest trip to Latin America is drawing expats from the United States.